So good morning. My name is Herr Möller. I'm from MaVinci. We are a UV company focusing on the geo market, as I told you before. And let's show you a little bit about our product, about our technology. So basically give you a small introduction about my talk and about the idea of using this technology. So if you want to acquire data with an UAV, you first have to start with making a flight plan. Then you have to fly a mission. Afterwards, you first have to check if the data is the integrity is okay, or if you have missed some data. And then the post-processing starts. And maybe the post-processing is on several steps. So first you make a point cloud. Sometimes out of this point cloud you generate added value. For example, solar capability or counting trees. And finally you got the data, whether you are interested in or where your customers are interested in. So and we are providing the technology for this whole tool chain. And I will present you this tool chain. So let's start with an example project we have did in Belgium. It was done together with our partner GeoID. They are a post-processing provider. So this project has been from along a highway, 170 hectares. The data was used for construction planning of a noise barrier, but not only for this. Main part of the project was also to communicate the project, the planning to the local people living next to the noise barrier. Because if you're doing something wrong with the communication, you could get really trouble with local people groups fighting against you. So a good communication of a project is half doing the project. So also visualization was really important. So this mission was split into 3 flights, not because we can't do it at once, but the UAV market is strongly regulated, and at least in Europe, in many European countries, you're only allowed to fly in visible range. So the area was too large for visible range, so we split it into 3 parts. Each part's about 10 to 15 minutes flight time, about 600 images, and the images has a resolution of 3 centimeters for each pixel. And in total, we have been there for about 4 hours in the city, and then we went home again. So that was the data collecting time. And afterwards, some days of processing by GeoID. So first, everything starts with a flight plan. For doing a flight plan, you have to select the area you're interested in. So we have a software, a little bit kind of Google Earth, a virtual globe, kind of Google Earth integrated into our flight planning software. You're just clicking the corner, selecting the ground sampling distance, press compute, and you got your flight plan. Then you can transmit it to the UAV, or you can store the mission. For example, if you prepare your flight plan at home, you can save it and fly it later. But that's only part of the story. Sometimes you have really complicated missions, large areas or different overlap requirements from your customers, so you can adjust everything you like, but you don't have to. You can automatically, your software automatically asks you if the flight plan is too big, do you want to split this? You say, oh, no. Then you ask you, oh, but it's longer than the maximum battery time. Do you really not want to split this? Okay, let's split it. Then you got a splitting. Then you can edit the splitting if you like, or stay with this. The splitting saves you up to 30% of mission time by doing it automatically, because the overlap between the different flights are minimized, but not more than minimal. So you are sure that you got everything, but not more. For some of our customers had really problems to flying in Scotland and really difficult terrain, because you have all the small hills. And if you're flying on a constant altitude, you got in the valleys really big pixels, on the mountains really small pixels, on the top of the mountains really less overlap, and the bottoms of the valleys way too much overlap. So our software also compensates this by choosing the flight altitudes of the different lines, automatically adjusting an optimal angle. Now, during one flight line, you are always on the same level. But it would also be fun, yeah? All the stuff. And sure, we have a real GIS system, so you can plan on top of KML data, on top of WMS services. GeoTIFF files can be loaded as well as imagery, as well as altitude GeoTIFF files. So now you have to fly the mission. Flying means, at least for our system, you just throw it in the air. If you don't believe me, try it yourself outside of the INTERGEO. We have a live presentation there. Then you have to fly the mission. That's totally automatically, and then the system lands on a desired, on a firstly selected spot So, automatically. But in Europe, you're not allowed to let's flying a system completely without controlling it. So at least in many our countries, always a human has to stand there and control it with his own eyes. So camera systems are not okay. With your own eyes, so glasses are okay, but what are the name of the far-looking glasses? They are not okay. So you have to control it with your own eyes, and if a rescue helicopter is crossing, you have to go there away. A panic button is not sufficient. So you need a possibility to steer the UAV in emergency situations. So sure, you can do a manual control, like on a toy airplane, but that's hard to learn. You need 2 months for learning this. So what we have developed at MaVinci is a so-called assisted mode. That means you need only half a day for learning this, even for landing with this system. And half a day learning means you only have to steer up, down, left, right, and the stabilization of the system against turbulences is done automatically by the board computer. So it's quite easy to learn, and you can use this also for landing, because if you land automatically, you say land somewhere here in that direction, but maybe you have wind, and you're a little bit on the side. Maybe you have GPS inaccuracy. For example, in Africa and South America, the GPS is only accurate to, let's say, 15 meters. So we have differential GPS available as option, but that's not default. And so maybe if you're 15 meters more right, maybe you hit a tree and you lost a wing. So it's possible to repair this, but you lose some money. And you sometimes don't want to lose money. So what we have developed is this assisted mode that you can just avoid the trees by a little bit more left, and then it's fine, and it's landing. One customer told us a project, what he have done with the system of a competitor of us. They collected a lot of stones in a desert, put them away, that they get a landing field. What the UAV did is landing in the stone mountain next to the landing field, not on the landing field. So some meters next to the field, and directly you got a broken UAV. So by landing assistedly, so it's half a day learning for you, but you save a lot of money. Our bodies typically live more than 200 flights. We calculate the spare part cost of 18 euros for every flight. There are the bodies, the battery, the wings, everything what could break is included. So it's quite cheap. So as I told you, we have a real durable system, but if something breaks, if you hit a tree, and sometimes the wing could break, you can easily glue it because it's a special foam material. Our system is highly wind sustainable, so we can operate up to 50 kilometers an hour wind, up to 65 kilometers an hour both. So that's the wind strong up to 7-8 Bedford. That's a medium-sized storm. And we can operate in rain. Maybe the images are not that nice in rain, but the UAV isn't falling from the sky. So sometimes you get surprised by rain, so you couldn't always avoid this. So our total mission time is 40 minutes. So that is the time where you can take images. The battery time is 55 minutes. So you have some spare time for starting, for landing, and as a safety reserve. If the battery is empty, you're not falling from the sky. The more engine stops, but you can still sail down, and you can still control the system. Only the engine is stopping after 55 minutes. And so in this 40 minutes mission time, you can acquire a lot of data. For example, at 10 centimeters ground sampling distance, that is about 500 meters flying altitude. So it depends on the local law if you're even allowed to fly that high. You got, for a pseudo orthophoto, that means only a rough 3D model, you get up to 670 hectares. If you, on the opposite, if you need really sharp and small pixels, 2 centimeters is at 100 meter flying altitude. And if you need a real 3D model, then you stay with 55 hectares for every flight. But as I told you, don't need any catapult. Our system is easily assembled. You can just change the battery. So we have really small ground time. And you can really, you are landing, put the system on the car, drive to the next spot, throw it again. So we have really small grounding time. So you not only have to count the mission time or the maximum battery time, you have to count how much percentage of the day are you making images. And we try to make this as high as possible, not only by battery lifetime. So next, after the flight, you have a lot of data. And for example, in, let's say, 40 minutes flight, you are collecting about 6 gigabytes of images. Processing this data took on a really, really new and strong computer with a really good solution, 3 hours. With a not so strong, not so good computers, maybe 2 days. So in 1 day flying, you're collecting enough data for processing 1-2 weeks. So you can't do it directly. Normally, you don't have some computers in your car to make it in the background. So it's really important to check the data somehow, if you got everything you want, if the coverage is okay. And for this reason, we have this coverage indication. Green means coverage is okay, orange means somehow okay, red means bad. So I virtually extend this area so you can see the red stuff. So this project was well covered, but I done this artificially. And so now maybe you want to take a detailed look inside of this data. So this quick check is available 5 minutes after flight. Maybe during the next flight, you can directly check the first one, or maybe during the 5 minutes on the ground. So you can see if you got everything directly on the field. For example, if you have missions far away in Africa and your office is in Europe, you don't want to come home and then realize, oh, you've lost some data. That could be really, really expensive for you to travel back to the mission field. So we can zoom in. Here's one image. That's the image in detail. And for example, that is the image quality. So that's 3 centimeters ground sampling distance. And you can zoom in even further, and you see the images are sharp down to the 3 centimeters level. So we are using Micro Four Thirds cameras. They have really big sensor size, so that means the images are really sharp. So only the camera costs in our system over 1,000 euros. So now you have to process your data. Processing is not done by ourselves, because we think what we are really good in is the tool chain, is the UV, is the manufacturing of such systems. But for post-processing, there are many companies available on the market. We have relation to a lot of them, because everything can do something special on this particular field. And so we have dozens of interfaces. It's always one click, and you got a project and another software. It's opening, then you can press the compute button in another software. So it's easy to use for you. And we're even speeding up this other softwares by pre-filtering the images and letting them only calculate the stuff what you really need. So this software typically outputs an autophoto. That means a parallel perspective from a top. So you don't see any side walls of the buildings because they're normally pointing directly to the sky. So they are removed from the images. So if you go to Bing Maps or Google Maps, that's only pseudo-auto. So we are better with the solutions. And you can get a 2D, 2.5D point cloud or a real 3D point cloud, depending on the software and on your needs. But that's not the value your customers are typically interested in. They want to visualize something, to document something, to measure volumes or areas, or even counting trees, planning a solar farm. And some of those providers even directly give you this added value instead of a lot of points. So depending on your needs, here you have so-called service providers. They're doing the job for you, or you can doing it yourself with your own software. So, but an interesting question we got always asked: how accurate is your system? So, answering with this question, we have done this project together with GeoID. So the rule of thumb is if you have a ground sampling distance, the accuracy in X and Y is about twice. For example, 3 centimeters ground sampling distance means 6 centimeters X and Y accuracy and 9 centimeters in Z. So now we want to know if this rule of thumb is true. We checked it under this data. So this mission had, I think, 10 ground control points. So these points were measured, and typically what many post-processing companies are doing it, using these ground control points for fitting their model to get it more accurate, and afterwards they're measuring how good their job have been fitting these points. Maybe if you're a little bit more interested in math, you see there's a bug inside of this idea. Because if you try to optimize this point and afterwards you're measuring the error on the points you have optimized, not on an independent point, you're doing something wrong. So this is a really big underestimation of the error during the using the calibration error. But that's the error you typically get told. So don't trust it. That's the key message of the slide. What GeoID did is cross-validation error. That means if you have 10 points, you only calibrate with 9 points, and you're measuring the error on the 10th point, and then you're changing the rule. And so you're measuring always, you're making this 10 times for every point, so you get 10 errors, and then you can get the square root of the mean square error. And that's something you can trust even really much more in. But this is a little bit overestimation of the error. And for this data set, we were really happy because inside of this data set, you can see a highway. And this highway was measured some years before with a really high accuracy. And we can use this 1,700 reference points for measuring the Z elevation, so the elevation inaccuracy. And it was about 11 centimeters. So the rule of thumb is really valid, and you can use it for your projects. But if you need more information, you have to check the stuff. And don't check it by calibration error. Please check it by cross-validation error. That's much more trustable. And as I told you, we can go down to 2 centimeters pixel size, so you can get as error maximum, minimum error, 4 centimeters in X and Y, and 7 centimeters maybe in Z direction. But these errors are normal distributed. That means if you're calculating in volume, you get on the surface all the small errors, but they're canceling each out. So the total error isn't the worst case. They are compensating each other a little bit. And if you have, for example, if you have a big hive of coal and you want to measure how many millions cubic meters of coal are on this hive, maybe the hive is 100 meters in diameter, and if you know 100 meter diameter of the hive and 6 centimeters error, so the relative error in volume or an area measurement of larger sites is really, really small if you're on that resolution. And compared to LiDAR, you always get an image where you can check if the 3D model is okay, and you get the point cloud, and a really, really dense point cloud. So, last slides. How is our system performing compared to traditional methods? Let's first start with manned airplanes. So, it's not totally the same, but many of our customers ask us, so why should I use you and not the manned airplane? So, you can use both. We would be fine with that. But if you want to buy your own system, UAV is probably a much smaller investment for you. For example, for smaller companies, or if you need in many places in your big company is UAV, you don't want to buy everywhere a manned airplane. Such a small UAV is more affordable, and you can place more of them locally. You don't need any infrastructure at grounds. Even no catapult, you just throw it in the air. Everything you need is your laptop, this box. So you can use the battery out of from your car to recharge the battery of the airplane. So everything is fine. If you don't have your manned airplane, you can also rent one for service. But then you have to wait until the flight you got the next flight. And sometimes you have really urgent missions. You have a crop damage, and you want to get the measurement now because in 2 days you can't see the damage anymore at that accuracy. So if you have your own system, you can just use it. You don't have to wait for anyone. So total mission time is really comparable for sites up to some 100 hectares. And what's also important, we are typically fly below clouds. So our typically flying altitude is 150 meters. That gives us 3 centimeters ground sampling distance. And that is many places you're not allowed to fly with manned airplanes that low. So another traditional methods are total stations with surveying teams. So we are much faster. What we are doing is measuring like LiDAR every point at once, and later on the PC you can select the points you're interested in. So you not have to select the points you want to measure in before. Then you're doing this after the project. First measure, then measure all. Afterwards select, and so you can't forget any points anymore because you got all the data. If you have one customer making this hive volume measurement with ground-based LiDAR, and he has all with the problems that he not is getting the top view of the hives. So you're getting the sides really precise with some millimeters accuracy, but he was always missing the tops. So what does it help you if you got millimeter accuracy on only part of the data, and the other part of the data is totally missing? So afterwards, with ground-based LiDAR, he needed about a day for his missions. With a manned app, with a UAV, he took him only 1 hour for collecting the data. Post-processing time was about equal, so he was really happy about this. And yeah, for example, by LiDAR, you don't collecting any images, so you have a point cloud. But if you are suspicious, if some spikes in the point clouds are real, you'd have nothing for comparison. If you got an image and you see there are some spikes, and you're not sure about them, you can go in the image and see, oh, there's a tree. Okay, I'm fine. The spike is okay. And as I told you before, for volume and area calculation, we are really high accurate because of cancellating the errors out each other, and because if you have bigger volumes to calculate, small errors on the sides doesn't matter anymore. So thank you for your attention, and I want to invite you to our live demonstration. The next live demonstration will be starting at 11, so in about half an hour. And it goes up to 13 o'clock, and I think at 15:30 to 17:30, the next live demos will be. And you can steer yourself, you can start yourself. Landing, you can assist us at landing. There you need a little bit more than, for landing you need more than 2 minutes to learn it. But for flying, we just give it to you, and you can just fly if you like, assisted. Automatic flying is boring because you don't have to do anything. But you can also make some flight plans, and our booth is flying a simulation. So, thank you for your attention, and I'm open to questions if I have some time left.